Hello and welcome to 30 Days of Photoshop. Today is day one, our program tour. Now this is the perfect place to start if you've never opened up Photoshop or just if you haven't used it in a while. Photoshop, there's a lot of different options and it's a crazy powerful program. So we need to know kind of like where everything is located and how each of the tools and the options and the modules work with one another and how we can customize this to fit your needs. Now, before we get into our program tour, I do want to mention Photoshop is insanely powerful and there are a lot of different tools and features, but there's actually a core set of tools and features that we use most of the time. So you don't need to know how to do everything in Photoshop to create stunning images. So by the end of today's course, you're going to be able to navigate really well around Photoshop. You'll be able to set up different workspaces depending on what type of work you're going to be doing in Photoshop. We'll show you how to customize everything to fit exactly what you need to do. We got a great video for you. Let's jump into Photoshop. So we're starting off with a splash screen here in Adobe Photoshop 2025. This is a great place to get started. So as you can see, I'm right here in my home screen right now. I can create new projects up at the top and I have anything that I've recently worked on right here. Now over here on the very top left, we can see we can create a new file or we can just open an existing file or an existing project. Let's go ahead and click on New File up on the top left and kind of show you how this works. So with our new file, this is basically setting different sizes of a new file. And these are all templates that you can click on. Basically, you have the width of your project here, the height of your project here, and the resolution of your project. Now, these are just some recent file sizes that we have, but you can always create your own right here. For instance, if you're creating a flyer or maybe you're getting ready to print something and you know exactly what the final dimensions of this project are going to be, all you have to do is simply type them here. You got your width and your height and your resolution and you're good to go. You can even set contents like your background color. Now, the cool thing about this screen is we have a lot of different options here at the top. So I can go into my saved option. We can create our own. For instance, if I'm doing a project over and over again, you can save your own template. Also here up at the top, for instance, you see photo and you have some default sizes. For instance, if you know you're going to be doing a 7" by 5" print, this is a fantastic place to start. But what I really want to call attention to are all of the templates. So as you can see, I'm here in photo and we have all of these different interesting photo templates, like an instant photo markup set. These are all included in Photoshop. I can click on print, and again, I'm going to see some print sizes, like a standard letter, 8.5 by 11 inches. But then I also have all of these different flyers. So for instance, I'm going to click on this flyer here. I can see a preview. This is our 4th of July. You can actually download this directly into Photoshop. You can see it's completely free, and you can start working on this flyer immediately. Let's go ahead and close. So all these are really great starting places if you're not exactly sure what you're going to be doing. We can go into the web, and maybe if you want to create a laptop mock-up of the home office, you could simply open this template and it's going to be everything you need to know built in there. So I do recommend not only you can create new documents based on custom sizes, but be sure to check out all of these templates that can be really helpful, especially if you're just getting started and maybe this is something that you want to create. So all this is built here right into the new document format. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on close because what I'd like to do is actually start by bringing in my own sample image. Now I can simply grab a sample image from my computer and click and drag it right into Photoshop. This can be any type of image file. That's where Photoshop is great. It can read any type of image file. Or you can simply go right here to open. Now if I click on open, we're just going to go to our day one tour. We're going to go to our sample images and you can see I have my program tour.jpg. By the way, awesome thing about 30 Days of Photoshop, you can download all of the sample assets so you can follow along with all 30 days. It's totally free. Right down below, click on the link on PHLEARN.com. All right, now I'm going to click on cancel here because I just want to show you the rest of your way around. So we have new file, which we've already gone over. We have open. This is our home screen here where again, you can open a new file, start a project. You can even download Photoshop on the iPhone and you have your recents. Next, we have our Learning tab. If you want to start by taking a few interactive tutorials right here in Photoshop, this is a fantastic place to learn. So I highly recommend starting here if you've never done anything in Photoshop. This Learn tab is new and it's brilliant. Now, everything here where you see for your files, these are going to be your cloud-based files. So if you like storing your images on the cloud through Adobe, you can see you can access your files, any files that are shared with you directly. You can even do your Lightroom-based cloud files and your recently deleted, all here in the splash screen. Okay, so now it's time to go ahead and open up our first image. So let's go ahead and right here, we're going to click on Open. And again, we're going to go to our sample image. Don't forget, you can download this so you can follow along, as well as all of the assets for 30 days of Photoshop. It's totally free. Click on the link right down below. Okay, so now that we've clicked there, we're going to go ahead and click on Open, and here we can see our image. Now, what I did before we started this tutorial is I reset my workspace to the default workspace. So you're going to see this should just look exactly like your version of Photoshop if you haven't made any modifications. This is the default workspace of how Photoshop comes loaded. Here on the left-hand side, we have our toolbar. These are all the commonly used tools that we're going to be using in Photoshop. Now, with each of these tools here on the left-hand side, we have our options panel here on the very top. So with every tool, for instance, if I click on the Move tool here, you can see I have new options. I have my alignment tools that are nested in with the Move tool. So as I click down each one of these tools, you're going to see I have a new set of options up at the very top. So when you're using your tools, be sure to go through your different options and see exactly what's available. Next, we have our contextual taskbar. Now, the contextual taskbar basically gives you commonly used tasks based on what actions you're performing in Photoshop. For right now, you can see I have my background layer selected here in my layers panel. Don't worry, we're going to talk about all those panels and things like that on the right hand in just a second. But basically, I have my background selected. So from here, if I wanted to, for instance, remove my background, all I have to do is click there and remove my background, and you can see it's completely done. I'm going to hit Control or Command Z to hit undo, but basically my contextual taskbar gives me suggestions on what layer I'm on or what tools I'm using in Photoshop. Okay, so we have our tools here, we have our options here at the top, and our contextual taskbar. Now over here on the right hand side, we have all of our different modules in Photoshop, and here's where you can see how powerful it is. We have things like our color module, our swatches, our gradients, our patterns, properties, adjustment, libraries. Down here we have layers, we have channels, we have paths, and over here to pop out, I've got my history, and we've even got some commenting if you share for a review. Now, before we kind of go in and go more in depth with all of these different panels, I want to change a couple of different workspaces because this is where Photoshop gets really powerful. Not only in using the built-in workspaces, but also in creating your own workspaces. Okay, so let's go ahead and show you how to do this because Photoshop is about to change quite a bit, but I want to show you can change Photoshop a lot in terms of the workspaces, but you can always get it back to how you feel comfortable. Okay, so we're going to go up here where it says Window. Let's click on Window, and down here we're going to go to Workspace, and you can see we have a few different workspaces. Now, some of these I've created my own, and some of these right here are built into Photoshop. So right now we're in the Essentials. This is how you download Photoshop. It's always going to show up like this. Now let's go ahead and click on Motion. We're going to click on Motion, and you're going to see everything changes completely. Now I have things like my histogram and my libraries and my layers, but I also have a timeline for creating animations. How cool is that? So we're going to go down to Window, Workspace, and we're going to go to Painting. Okay, and now here in my painting, I see like my color swatches where I can pick all my colors. And I have some interesting brushes that I can choose in Photoshop as well. My history panel, my clone snap, all of these things are just kind of moved around to fit these different workspaces. We're going to go to Window, Workspace, and we're going to go to Photography. So if you're working with your photos, you can see now you have your histogram, which is really great to see. You have your adjustments where you can change things like your brightness and contrast and curves and even your vibrance and hue and saturation. And then you have your layers as well. We're going to go to Window, Workspace, and then go to Graphic and Web. And here's where you might see your character menu, where you're going to be doing a lot of work with type, paragraph menu, where you're going to do things like alignments. And then you have your libraries. Maybe you're creating like cloud-based libraries of assets that you're going to be using over and over in your projects. And then again, down here we have our layers and we have our history right up here as well. So you can see there's a lot of different panels built into Photoshop. Let's go ahead and show you where all of these panels are, and then we're going to reset everything back to the Photoshop Essentials and show you how to customize everything. Okay, so I'm going to click right here on Window, And basically all of these panels are the different options in Photoshop. So if you want to see your color panel, let's go ahead and click on our color panel. You can see my color panel is actually nested right here in my sidebar, but I can click on any of these panels and bring it out there. There we go. Let's go ahead and close that. And I can even change the size of this and put them wherever that I want. So I have my color panel here. If I want that up all the time, I can have it there. If I want to go ahead and close out my color panel, I can close it by clicking on this X icon. And if I want to bring it back, no worries. Just go to Window and then down here to Color, and it's going to come back. I can also take this panel and put it in any of the other panels that I want. So I'm going to take Color, and we're just going to click and drag it right back over here underneath all that. And now you can see I have a little icon so I can open and close my color panel. So there's no destructive actions that you can take here. If you take something, let's say you take your toolbar over here and you click here and you drag it out there and you close your toolbar and you go to Window and you turn off your contextual taskbar and you, take all these out and you destroy everything and you're like, I've just totally messed up Photoshop. What am I doing? Let's say something like this happens. It's really not a big deal because you can reset it at any time. So for instance, I can go to Window, down to Workspace, and I'm going to go to where it says Reset Graphic and Web. Because you remember earlier we clicked on Graphic and Web. I just changed it so much and you're like, where did all my stuff go? All you have to do is go to Reset Graphic and Web or Reset. It's just going to say whatever workspace you're in, reset it, and boom, it's back to exactly how it was. So don't worry, you can't destroy anything. So now let's go back to our Photoshop Essentials default workspace. We're going to talk through everything now that we know what we're doing, and we're going to go with the nuances and show you how to customize. Okay. So let's go to Window, down here to Workspace, and we're going to go to Essentials. Okay, now we just see like maybe I moved some things around. Okay, so we're going to go to Workspace. We're going to go to Reset Essentials. So now this is going to be exactly what it looks like when you download Photoshop for the first time. Okay, so now let's go ahead and show you to customize it. Now, of course, there are so many uses of Photoshop, as you can see. Graphic design, you can do animation, you can do color work, you can do painting, you can do photo editing as well. So we're going to set this up for where I think it's going to be really great for photo editing, starting all the way on the left-hand side and moving our way to the right-hand side. Okay, so on the left-hand side, we are going to see our toolbar. Now, these are all of the commonly used tools. We're going to talk about these tools in just a second. What I like to do is expand my toolbar by clicking on this option here to go ahead and expand that toolbar out just like that. That way I see all of my commonly used tools right up here at the very top. Then I see my colors, I see things like quick masks and full screen and our generative workspace. So that's all located right here together. Now let's go ahead and talk briefly about some of the more commonly used tools, some keyboard shortcuts, and how these tools are nested visually. So we're going to go up here to the very top left. This is our Move tool. This is what we use for moving different elements that are on different layers in Photoshop. So the Move tool. Now you can see as I hover over it, it says the Move tool, and then in parentheses, the keyboard shortcut V. So anytime you need to access the Move tool, you can simply hit V on your keyboard. And if you forget the keyboard shortcuts for any tools, not a big deal. You can simply hover over the tool itself. You can see elliptical marquee M. It's going to tell you the keyboard shortcut right there, which is great. Now for the Move tool, you're going to see this little icon right down here on the bottom right of the Move tool. That means if you click and hold there, it actually has a tool nested under that as well. So here we can see I have the Move tool, but under this I have the Artboard tool as well. So any tool that you see, for instance, I have the elliptical marquee tool. If I click and hold there, I've got some cool tools that are built into there as well. So rectangular or an elliptical, single row and single column. So any of these options that have this little down arrow right there, object selection tool, for instance, it's going to be nested with the quick selection tool and the magic wand tool. Now, Photoshop, there are so many tools, but we're going to talk very quickly about some of the more commonly used ones and talk about what they're actually used for. But before we do that, we're going to turn on our contextual taskbar because I got rid of it earlier in this video. Now, we turned this off earlier, but we're going to go back to Window. We're going to turn on our contextual taskbar. So keep in mind, any window that you want to see at any time is located here. You can turn these off and on. So let's go ahead and turn on our contextual taskbar. Now, as you can see, just like we did earlier, remember earlier when we clicked on remove background and it literally just removed the background for our subjects. Now, this contextual taskbar is located right down here on the bottom by default. Now, let's say we create an action. For instance, I use my elliptical marquee tool and I make a selection right around here for my subjects. Okay, now our contextual taskbar shows up right here under my selection. And if I made another selection here, it would show up under there as well. Now, personally, what I like to do is have my contextual taskbar stay in the same place every single time. So that's our first customization. What we're going to do is click right here where it says ... in our contextual taskbar. We're going to go to pin the bar position. Okay, so it's going to put it in a specific place. And I like to use my icon right over here for moving the contextual taskbar. I like to put it here on the top left. So no matter what I do, it's always going to be on the top left. All right, now let's go ahead and see. I just made a selection with my elliptical marquee tool. Now, selections are a big part of Photoshop because that determines what you're actually going to be editing in Photoshop. So for instance, I made a selection around our subjects there. And now my options here with the contextual taskbar are based around that selection. So for instance, I could feather the edge of my selection. I could invert my selection. I could create a layer mask from this selection. I could fill the selection. I could use an adjustment layer that would apply just for that selection, or I can go ahead and just deselect this. All right, now for fun, let's create an adjustment layer. I'm going to click right here on our adjustment layers, okay? You're going to see it's going to move into my adjustment panel. And let's say, you know what? I want this area to be a little bit brighter. I made that selection for my subjects. I want it to be brighter. We're going to click right here where it says brightness and contrast. Boom. Open that up and you see we have a brightness and contrast adjustment layer. Okay. And now within that, I now have my properties panel and I can say, you know what? Let's make that a little bit brighter right there. So I started off by making a marquee selection. There we go. And with that selection, here in my contextual taskbar, I was able to create an adjustment where we did a brightness and contrast, and then I made my brightness a little bit higher. Don't worry, if this is like, whoa, you just did a lot of stuff, we're gonna be going through all of this stuff throughout 30 days of Photoshop, and you're gonna be such a pro by the end of it. Now, there is one more thing that I wanna do. Right now, you can see I made a pretty hard edge of my selection. There we go. And I made a brightness and contrast adjustment. So remember, it was in the adjustments. I clicked on bright and contrast. It made a brightness and contrast adjustment layer. So I'm going to go ahead and click here on the layer mask. We're going to go to filter. We're going to go down to blur, and I'm going to give it a Gaussian blur. And I'm just going to blur the edge of my layer mask. So you can see as I change my radius here, you're going to see the edge here is just going to get more and more blurry. There we go. Let's continue to push that out. And this is just a really great way of adding a little brightness to where your subjects are, and it's going to blur nicely with the rest of the background. So that was just a super quick example. But now let's go ahead and go down our toolbar and kind of briefly talk about what they do. But I did want to get you guys into the relationship of here are the tools in Photoshop. Here are the options for those tools in Photoshop. And then when you make an action with those tools, these are going to be the most common actions you can take after using those tools. So starting off with our move tool, this is basically how we move elements around our image. And if I click here, you can see I can actually move this brightness around. Okay, I can click here and I'm going to go to my properties window. We're going to make it a little bit brighter so you can actually see. But with my move tool now, I can actually move this bright spot around. How cool is that? And I can change the brightness at any point in time. So anything that I do in Photoshop, anything I create on a new layer, I can move it around with my move tool. Next, we have selections, which you already know a little bit about. If you make a selection, then you can use that selection to edit that specific area of the photo. Like we made an elliptical marquee earlier, just by doing something like this. You can see our contextual taskbar shows us options for that selection, including deselect. There we go. Now we have a few other selections. We have our selection brush tool, which I absolutely love. This will allow you to simply paint on any area of your photo, and wherever you paint, that is going to become the selection. So if I wanted to paint something like that, and I wanted to do an adjustment, and I wanted to say, let's go ahead and say our vibrance. I want to bring up my vibrance. It's going to bring it up just where I paint. Okay, so you can see I'm adding or removing color right there as well. Of course, I would want to blur this. I'm going to hit undo a couple of times, but don't forget you have your history panel here where you can go through and change your history and go back in time at any point in time. Fantastic. All right, let's go right over here. So we have our other selection brush tool here. Now we have our object selection tool, and our object selection tool will allow you to hover over anything in your image. There we go. And it'll automatically find the different objects. So for instance, where you can go to select a subject here within my object. Remember, we're using a tool. Here are all the options for my tool. And we can see that now our subjects are selected. So we're able to use this tool to select our subjects. With our subjects selected, again, I could make just them brighter if I wanted to. So we have our selection active. I could go to my adjustments. There we go. Let's go to a brightness contrast. And then literally I can just make my subjects a little bit brighter if I wanted to, lower the contrast, and look how nice that looks there as well. So earlier we used just a simple marquee that I blurred, but now we actually used our subjects to select and we made them brighter. So selection tools are fantastic whenever you want to edit a specific part of your image. Okay, let's go ahead and move down the toolbar again. Now keep in mind, there's so many different tools, there's so many different options and features. We're just kind of getting the highlights and showing you the brief overview. So here's where our tools are. Next, we have our crop tool, which allows you to change your composition of the image. And now with AI, we can generative crop, where you can actually expand out and make your image even larger, and it'll use AI to generative fill that area, which is super cool. You have your frame tool if you want to select specific areas of your images, make shapes like squares and circles, and then fill images inside of those selections. It's really good for photo collages and things like that. Frame tool is great. You have your eyedropper tool where you can sample any color of your image and then use that in your designs. Next, you have your healing brush tool and your remove tool. Click there and go down to your remove tool. Again, you can see all of these are located together, but if you have something you'd like to remove from your photo, the remove tool is a great place to start. Fantastic. Next, we have our brush tool. If you simply want to do some painting on your image, or you need to make a layer visible or invisible with a layer mask, the brush tool is a great place to do that. So Photoshop is a very artistic program as well. Next, we have our clone stamp tool. This works if you want to copy one part of your image over to another one. It's used a lot for removing things in your photograph, but now with AI, we tend to use that a little bit more. Okay, here we have your history brush tool. We don't really use that honestly that much. It's a little bit for more art based. We have our eraser brush tool. If you paint something on your image and you want to erase it, that's a good way to do it as well. We have our gradient tool. If you want to create stunning active gradients, the gradient tool, we're going to be using this later in our series. It's fantastic. We have our blur tool, which is located here with our smart sharpen and our smudge tool as well. Okay, we have our new adjustment brush tool. This will allow you to paint over a specific area of your photo and then automatically bring up an adjustment, like adjusting your brightness or even changing color. Next, we have our burn tool, which is with our dodge tool. This is for making certain areas of your image lighter and darker for more of a creative effect. Next, we're gonna go down to our pen tool. Now, the pen tool was used to cut objects out of their background, but now we have AI selections in Photoshop, which do a great job. So we don't use the pen tool as much, but it does create beautiful vector graphics if you need to as well here in Photoshop, kind of like how Illustrator does. All right, we have our type tool. We have an entire video on the type tool and the new dynamic type, which is amazing. Basically, if you want to create text with your image and layout, this is a great place to do it. All right, we're moving on to our direct selection tool, which works with the pen tool. We have our rectangle tool, ellipse tool, triangle tool. This is where you can create shapes that you can modify at any time. It's perfect for graphics or designs. Okay, next we have our hand tool, which is used for kind of like scrolling and moving around your photo. For instance, so I click on my hand tool, I can there scroll around my photo. And we have our zoom tool, which I can click and zoom in and out of our photos. Next, we have our hand tool where you can pan around your image. And we have our zoom tool where you can zoom in and out of your photograph. Now, in actual practice in Photoshop, we have keyboard shortcuts to help us out with this. So if you're on a trackpad or have a pressure sensitive or touch sensitive tablet, all you have to do is use 2 fingers and move them around just like you would on a phone. And that's going to work for panning. And you can use 2 fingers to pinch in and out, and that's going to work for zooming. If you're on a mouse and a keyboard, hold the space bar down and you can click and drag, and that's going to use your hand tool. And you can hold space bar plus controller command, and it's going to move to your zoom tool, and you can move in and out just like that. You can also hold controller command and click on the plus icon. That's going to allow you to zoom in, hold on controller command and click on the minus icon, and that's going to allow you to zoom out. So a lot of these features in Photoshop are available for keyboard shortcuts as well. Most of the time, we're not actually selecting these tools. Once you remember those keyboard shortcuts, it's much easier to just click on that key on your keyboard. Moving on down, we're almost done with the toolbar. We just have our colors. So we have our foreground color and our background color. Now let's go ahead and click on our foreground color. We have our color picker here where we can choose any color that we'd like. Okay, we have our hue slider here and saturation and lightness here. But if we go right over top of our image, you can see it automatically goes to our eyedropper, and I could select the sample from our subject. Let's just make sure we're on the right layer here, because you can see when I went over here, it actually selected from the layer mask because that's what I have selected. So let's go right down here to our background layer. Okay, we're gonna double click on our color, and then I'm gonna sample from his shirt, boom. And you can see it's the exact color from the shirt where I sampled, hit okay, and then that's the foreground color. So that's basically the entire toolbar in a GIF. Here we have our quick selections, which we don't use that much. We use our full screen modes and our generative workspace. Okay, so that's all the toolbars. Just keep in mind, with every single tool that you select, you have different options for your tool up here. And then when you create an action, like let's say we make a selection, our contextual taskbar is going to give us suggestions based on that action we just created. In this case, I'm gonna hit deselect. So that's basically everything on the left-hand side as well as the top. So now let's go ahead and talk about all of the modules on the right-hand side, and we're gonna customize this to fit our needs. But don't forget, if at any time you need to, you can go up here to Window, you can go down to your workspaces, you can use any of these default workspaces, and you can reset them if you want to get them back to the original point. And of course, you can click on any one of these different windows and it'll make it appear, and then you can nest it how you want. Okay. So now we're going to be doing some photo editing, and I've actually done some very light photo editing already, right? Like we had our background layer. Remember, we created this select subject and brightened up our subjects, and we even used a marquee selection tool and added some brightness and contrast right there for the faces. Okay, now you remember when I used the brightness and contrast, I actually adjusted those properties within the properties window. So you can see properties here. This is where I can actually adjust the brightness of this individual brightness contrast adjustment layer. So properties is something we use a lot. Adjustments are also something we use a lot. We've used brightness and contrast to brighten up certain parts of our layer. Now we're gonna move into libraries. This can be really nice if you're doing like graphics or design works or working with team. Basically, if you have any assets that you wanna store on the cloud, you can put them there. But I don't tend to use these much for photo editing. So what I'm gonna do with libraries here, I don't need it taking up space personally. I'm gonna just simply click and drag my libraries out there, and then I'm gonna close this down because I simply don't use those very often. Now, I have total control if I wanna get them back, window down here and just turn on my libraries once again, and I have them, but I don't necessarily need them taking up space in my Photoshop workflow all of the time, if that makes sense. All right, let's go ahead and close this down. Now, my color picker here as well. Now remember here we clicked on our background and I used my color sampler and we used our eyedropper to select a color from his sweater. Well, I have all of my color tools right here. I don't necessarily need to see a color picker here all the time because I can simply click on this icon within my toolbar and I have the exact same color picture, which I actually even have more options. So a color picker, this might be really great if I'm doing graphics, but for photography, for photo editing, I really don't use it that often. So I'm gonna bring out my color and we're gonna go ahead and take that out and remove it. Now swatches, this will basically show us all of our recent colors, and we have some built-in interesting swatches here as well. Again, may be great for graphic design, but I'm not gonna be using this so often for photo editing. So we're gonna take that and we're gonna move that out as well. Gradients are fantastic, and I use these a lot, especially if I'm trying to do like design work. But again, for photo editing, maybe we don't use them. So we're gonna take those and drag them out as well, okay? And then same with patterns. Let's click and drag that out and move that there as well. So now you can see we're simplified here. I have my layers, which we use a lot. You can see I have my background layer. I can turn both of these layers off and on, okay? And then if I wanted to click here in my brightness and contrast, I can double click right here on the logo, and it's gonna go into my properties window and I can adjust my properties. So this is a pretty nice workflow. Basically, I have my adjustments. If I wanna create any of these adjustments, I can, and then I can edit them based on my properties and I can see my layers. We're looking pretty good. We're getting rid of a lot of stuff we don't need. Now, channels, these are a little bit more advanced. These are for selecting light and dark based on color channels in your images, and honestly, they're just not used that much anymore. So for instance, I'm gonna take this and move it on out. We're just gonna go ahead and close that. And paths, this is associated with the pen tool if we wanna create vectors, which again, it's a little bit more of a niche use. So we're gonna go ahead and take those and move those out as well. Now, here on the left-hand side, we're gonna have our history. I kind of like having a history, especially if I'm getting started in Photoshop. It is really nice to see my history because I can go back in time and choose, okay, let's just go backwards and say, maybe I messed up. Let's go back to my history. But maybe I don't want it here. I'm going to take my history and I'm going to bring it right over here with my layers. And then comments, this is going to be used for share for review. We're not going to be using that so much, so I'm going to go ahead and close that out here as well. So now you can see we have a much more streamlined workflow for photo editing. I have all of my commonly used tools here on the left-hand side. I have my options for those tools on the top. I have my contextual taskbar, which is going to give me suggestions on what I might want to do with those tools. And I have all of my basics. I have my layers panel, I have my properties, I have my adjustments, and I have my history. So this is a really great place for me to get started, and I've gotten rid of everything that I don't need. So now let's go ahead and show you how to save this workspace. Maybe you like this workspace. Don't forget, you can change it at any time. But if you like this workspace that we just created, you can save it and get back to it at any time. So we're going to go up here to Window. We're going to go to Workspace, and I'm going to click right here on New Workspace. All right. And we're just going to call this Photo Editing 2025. There we go. And click on Save. So now, Window, Workspace, I have Photo Editing 2025. So anytime I want to get back to this exact workspace, let's say I get to my Essentials, and then I go to Workspace and I go to Reset Essentials. So this is back how Photoshop was when we downloaded it. No big deal. We can go to Window, Workspace, and I just go to Photo Editing 2025, boom, and it's exactly how we created it. So this is a great way of working in Photoshop, is just getting rid of the stuff you don't need so you have a more simplified workspace that actually serves the purpose that you want to use in Photoshop. So now that we've gone over the interface of Photoshop, we're going to show you a couple preferences. I like to increase the amount of history states so I can have more undos in Photoshop. That's right, you can choose how many times you want to be able to undo in Photoshop. We're also going to show you how to have it save automatically in the background just in case your computer or Photoshop crashes. And then we're going to show you through the toolbar and give you a brief overview of all of the different features. So to get to our settings or preferences, we're going to go right up here to where it says Photoshop 2025. We're going to go to settings and we're going to go right down. We're going to start with file handling. Fantastic. Now, of course, there are so many different settings and we're going to be working with these in future videos. But the big one I want to show you here is save in background. Make sure that's checked. And you can choose to decide how often you want to save this. The default is going to be 10 minutes, but you could set this to 5 minutes as well. This is just if you have, if you're worried Photoshop's going to crash, you don't want to lose your work. So saving this in the background is really important. Next, let's go ahead and increase the amount of times you can hit undo in Photoshop. Control or Command Z, or you can go back in your history panel. We're going to go right down here where it says performance. And here on the right-hand side, you have history states. So you can literally type in whatever number you want, all the way up to 1,000. So if you want to hit undo, keep in mind that the more history states you're going to use on your computer, it might increase RAM usage because it literally has to store that in the temporary memory. I usually use around 50, but if you find you want to increase that, that's totally okay. 50 is a great place to start. Okay, of course you can work with all these other options for your preferences as well, but I think those are two great options to check when you're first starting out in Photoshop. We like a lot of undos, right? And then here at the end of our program tour, we're gonna go briefly through our top menu. So as you can see, we're gonna click on File. This is all of our handling for our files. We're gonna be able to open a new project, open a project. We can open our recent, which is, you're gonna see we have a list of all of our recent projects. We're gonna be able to close here. We're gonna be able to save and export out for the web and things like that. Search for Adobe Stock, place images. This is all of our file handling located right here. Next, we're gonna move into Edit. Here's where we can do things like undo, we can copy and paste. We can go to a generate image using our generative workspace. We can do things like sky replacement, and we have some more advanced options here in the bottom. Here's where we're gonna go to image. This is where we can adjust areas on our image. We can make adjustments like our brightness and contrast, hue and saturation, things like that. We can also change our image size, image rotation, and we can duplicate these images if we want to create multiple different copies as well. Next, we're going to move into layer. We're going to be using this a lot in Photoshop because we want to be able to create new layers and work with layers. This is an essential part of Photoshop, and what separates Photoshop from other programs is we can create new layers and turn those off and on and change them at any time, meaning we have a non-destructive workflow that we can get back to our original image at any time. Super, super important. And within our layers, we have a lot of different types of layers. We have adjustment layers like brightness and contrast and levels and curves. Now, that's actually the exact same of what's located right over here in adjustments. You can see brightness and contrast and levels and curves. You can see it's the same list here. So this is how we make adjustments on our image like we've already done. This is also where we can create smart objects, which allow you to edit them infinitely and not lose any resolution. They're incredibly powerful, and we have a video just on smart objects later in our 30-day series. Next, we're going to move into type. So if you're going to be doing any type of graphic work with your type tool here, and you can see our type tool, we have all of the options that we would want to use for our type here in our type menu. We have our selection tool. Remember, we talked about making selections in Photoshop. That's how we can choose to decide where we want to edit from our image. So with our selection tool, we can select all or deselect or reselect. We can select our layers, isolate. You can select by color range or focus area or subject. You can even select your sky. And if you want to modify your selection, select and mask is the perfect place to do it. We have our filter menu where you can do things like a Gaussian blur, which we did earlier for our brightness and contrast. We have some really cool advanced things like Adobe Camera Raw. This is basically a raw processing software, super powerful, built in Photoshop. We can do things like liquify, which we have a tutorial on, which allow you to move your pixels around and reshape your image. And then we have some really useful tools like blurs and things like that. And then we have some more other things like stylizations as well. A lot of really powerful things here in our filter dialog. Next, we have our view options here where we can see we can zoom in and zoom out and change the sizes, go to actual sizes, change our screen mode to full screen. We can decide what we want to show in our image. We can show the layer edges on our grid and our pixel slices and things like that. We can turn on rulers. We can turn snapping on and off. Everything to do with your view. If you have any plugins, you can manage them from our plugins menu. Window menu, we've already gone over, which is all the windows. And then this is a huge, huge, huge one. The help, this is such a good help option. For instance, if we talk about smart objects, which we'll be doing in the future, but you're like, where are smart objects? All you have to do is simply type in smart. There we go. And you're going to see as I hover over any of these options, it's actually going to show you exactly where they are inside of the menus. So if we talk about anything in Photoshop and you're unsure where that thing is actually located, this is it's a big program. There's a lot to do here. Go to your help menu and simply type it in, and you're going to see it's going to show you exactly where it actually exists in your menus. The help menu in Photoshop is so incredibly powerful, and it's there for you. So anytime you forget, be sure to use the help menu. It's going to show you exactly what you need to know. And then here in our help menu, we have our hands-on tutorials, which we saw in our splash screen. You can see what's new, and you can go to the Photoshop help, which opens up a web page with help documents on articles on basically every part of Photoshop. And there we go. That is our program tour of Photoshop. You can see how incredibly powerful this program is, but you can also customize it exactly to your needs. And we can see all of our different modules and how they relate to one another. And hopefully by the end of this video, you have a little bit better idea of how everything works together and you can customize it to work for you. Thank you so much for watching our day one program tour here, part of our 30 days of Photoshop. Now, this is a completely free series available on YouTube, and all of the assets, including the Photoshop documents and the original images, are available totally for free for download on PHLEARN.com. Just click on the link right down below so you can follow along with the entire series and get all of our downloadable assets, including a calendar that'll help you keep track of your progress as we move through our 30 days. Join us tomorrow where we show you everything you need to know about opening your images, editing your images, and saving them out. We're going to show you the full process from start to finish. Thanks so much, and I'll PHLEARN you later. Bye, everyone.